There is a growing body of evidence suggesting the possibility of a lost ancient civilization hidden in our past. This video is an attempt to summarize much of that evidence in a digestible format, whilst also pointing to more in-depth examinations and discussions for those who are interested. This video in no way claims to be proof of a lost ancient civilization, but rather a brief overview of some of the key talking points that has led this theory, or variations of it, to become hugely popular in recent years. I hope you enjoy. In the 20th century, the prevailing scientific view was that modern humans only dated back to around 100,000 years ago, based on fossils like those from School and Kafze in Israel. More recent discoveries have pushed this back to at least 315,000 years ago, with fossils from Morocco reshaping our understanding of early Homo sapiens. What's undisputed is that anatomically modern humans, like you and me, have been around for at least 315,000 years. However, civilization only emerged around 5,000 years ago in ancient Sumer. This means that everything you've ever learnt about recorded human history happened in this tiny, recent 5,000-year-old window. So what happened during the other 300,000 years? And why did civilization take so long to emerge? Before we continue, I want to point you to an interesting hypothesis found in the world of physics. The Silurian hypothesis is a thought experiment proposed by scientists Gavin Schmidt and Adam Frank in 2018. It explores whether it would be possible to detect evidence of an advanced civilization that existed on Earth millions of years ago, long before humans. Given that most human-made structures and artifacts would decay within a few 100,000 years, the authors argue that basically nothing would remain as evidence. The hypothesis does not claim that such a civilization actually existed, but rather examines whether we would be able to recognize one if it had. And they said no. Now, I'm not bringing up the Silurian hypothesis to suggest there was some long-lost ancient human civilization hidden in our deep past. Rather, I think it's a fascinating way for us to frame and look at our own history. Given enough time, almost all trace of life's creations, no matter how advanced, disappear. Keep that in mind as you continue watching this video. Next, we need to talk about the catastrophic history of the Earth. Earth's history is marked by catastrophic events that have reshaped the planet and life itself. From mass extinction to sudden climate shifts, our world has been anything but stable. However, this isn't confined to our deep past. Cataclysmic events have happened recently. One particularly intriguing event is the Younger Dryas cataclysm, a sudden and severe return to near Ice Age conditions around 12,900 years ago. Now remember, modern humans have been on this planet for at least 315,000 years, so we'd already been around for the vast majority of our history when this Younger Dryas event happened. The Younger Dryas saw abrupt cooling that lasted around 1,200 years and may have been triggered by a massive comet impact, possibly over the North American ice sheets, suggesting a cataclysmic event that led to the re-advance of glaciers, the extinction of megafauna like mammoths, and could have caused mega tsunamis, mass wildfires, and glacial floods. For more information on the possible effects of the Younger Dryas, please Google the work of Randall Carlson. The Younger Dryas has led to much speculation that an ancient civilization may have been partially or wholly destroyed by this sudden disaster. We see examples in history like the Bronze Age collapse, which suggests multiple sophisticated civilizations have been brought down by much less extreme circumstances than the Younger Dryas. But if there was an ancient civilization at this time that was either immediately or gradually destroyed by the Younger Dryas climate event, surely we would see some evidence of it. We have plenty of evidence of humans living as hunter-gatherers, but just because we know primitive humans existed doesn't mean we can rule out a concurrent civilization. After all, uncontacted tribes exist today, at the exact same time as people sending rockets to space. So it's definitely possible, but is there really any evidence? Well, I'm now going to go through some of the best arguments that suggest there are clues in our ancient past that hint at this possibility. Many point to the idea that our species remembers this catastrophic event through myth. Flood myths appear in unconnected cultures around the world, hinting at a deep-rooted collective memory of ancient cataclysm. The Epic of Gilgamesh from Mesopotamia tells of Utnapishtim, who survives a divine flood in a great boat. The biblical Noah's Ark recounts a global flood sent by God. Hindu mythology describes Manu, who is warned by Vishnu to build a boat. The Aztec myth of Tlaloc speaks of a world-ending flood. In Chinese legends, the Gyeongyu flood describes catastrophic waters. And there are many, many more. Apologies for some of those pronunciations. But the point is that nearly every major civilization has some version of a cataclysmic deluge referenced in their myth. And this perhaps suggests a real ancient disaster which only remains in our collective memory. There's also the Atlantis myth, described by Plato in Timaeus and Critias. He tells of a highly advanced island civilization that existed 9,000 years before his time, putting it directly during the Younger Dryas. Said to be powerful, wealthy, and technologically sophisticated. According to the story, Atlantis angered the gods and was ultimately swallowed by the sea. Many suggest that the prevalence of the flood myth worldwide suggests memory of a real event. But of course, it's definitely not enough evidence on its own. Let's keep going, however, sticking with myth for the time being. Myths from cultures across the world also tell of civilization bringers, mysterious figures who appeared after a great catastrophe to teach humanity agriculture, law, and technology. In Mesopotamian myths, the Apkallu, divine sages, emerged after the flood to restore knowledge. In Andean legends, Viracocha arrived after a great deluge to rebuild civilization, teaching the Incas agriculture and engineering. And in China, the semi-divine emperor Fuji introduced writing, fishing, and civilization after a flood. These widespread myths suggest a deep-rooted belief in lost knowledge, possibly stemming from real ancient events. And many argue they depict the survivors of a collapsing civilization trying to restart it across the world. This leads us to another of history's greatest mysteries, which is the sudden appearance of civilization across the world at its accepted date. Around 5,000 to 6,000 years ago, human civilization began. Advanced societies like Sumer in Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley Civilization, ancient Egypt, the Yellow River Civilization in China, and the Coral Super Civilization in Peru emerged independently, each developing complex cities, agriculture, and governance without direct influence from one another. Despite vast geographical distances, these civilizations followed similar patterns, harnessing river systems for irrigation, creating early forms of writing or record keeping, and building monumental architecture. Considering the huge amount of time that humans have been on this earth, it seems odd that civilizations appeared independently of each other across the globe at almost exactly the same time. You could argue that perhaps there was some connection between ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, for example, as they are relatively close together, but this doesn't account for civilization in South America, which was totally isolated. On top of this, many of these civilizations seem to have started at their peak and declined rather than progressed. Ancient Egypt is a striking example. Its earliest dynasties were the most sophisticated, constructing monumental pyramids and developing an advanced religious and legal system, yet later periods showed technological and artistic decline rather than steady progress. Kind of the opposite direction to what you'd expect. Some speculate that earlier, now lost cultures may have passed down knowledge that's helped form these societies, and that was then lost. This raises the question, did civilization actually start when we're traditionally taught? If you open your history textbooks, you're unequivocally taught that civilization started around 5,000 years ago in ancient Sumer. But we're starting to find many ancient sites that dispute this. Scattered across the world are megalithic sites that predate known civilizations, raising questions about the technological abilities of prehistoric societies. The most obvious example is Göbekli Tepe. Dated at approximately 11,600 years old, so right towards the end of the Younger Dryas, Göbekli Tepe is by far the oldest megalithic site ever discovered on Earth. It's dated to around 6,000 years before the accepted start of civilization. The site contains at least 20 massive circular enclosures, only 4 of which have been excavated so far. These enclosures consist of nearly 200 huge T-shaped limestone pillars, most of which are still buried underground but have been identified by geophysical surveys. Many of these pillars are 20 feet tall and some weigh as much as 10 metric tons. Some unfinished or fallen pillars discovered at the site suggest even larger ones, possibly exceeding 50 metric tons. Many of these pillars are decorated by unbelievably intricate carvings of animals, abstract symbols, and possible astronomical alignments. Depictions of snakes, scorpions, vultures, foxes, and big cats suggest symbolic or religious meaning, and just look at these carvings. This level of skill requires incredible sophistication and dedication. This clearly isn't some primitive society. They were undoubtedly unbelievably knowledgeable, and many argue that some carvings, like those on Pillar 43, are a record of a past cosmic event. On top of this, the sheer levels of planning, organization, and logistics required to construct an enormous site like this is astounding. So who created it? How did they create it? And why? What prehistoric culture could have possibly built this project? Other examples include Baalbek in Lebanon, which contains the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, a single block weighing over 1,000 tons, cut and moved with unknown methods. In South America, Sacsayhuaman in Peru has impossibly tight-fitting megalithic walls, while Tiwanaku and Pumapunka in Bolivia contain precisely cut stone blocks that seem beyond the capabilities of their supposed builders. These ancient megalithic sites are upending the traditional timeline of human civilization, and many say they are evidence of a lost civilization. Others also point to the possibility of lost technology and machining evidence, which archaeology simply cannot explain. Evidence of lost technology and advanced machining in the ancient world can be found in numerous sites across the globe, many of which have been highlighted by researchers like UnchartedX. I recommend his video Evidence for Ancient High Technology if you want to do a deep dive on this. I'll quickly summarise some of his evidence, such as the Core 7 drill hole, which shows spiral grooves suggesting high-speed or ultrasonic drilling, and the Serapeum of Saqqara, where 100-ton granite boxes exhibit extreme precision and near-perfect 90-degree internal angles. The unfinished obelisk at Aswan has tool marks suggesting large-scale efficient cutting, while circular saw marks at Abu Sir indicate advanced stone cutting. There are granite vases that display perfect symmetry, and the Osirion at Abydos and the Valley Temple of Giza contain megalithic blocks fitted with extreme precision, hinting at lost construction techniques. Again, I encourage you to watch his videos to learn more. There's also the Egyptian pyramids themselves. We still don't fully understand how the ancient Egyptians built the pyramids, especially the Great Pyramid of Giza, a structure so precise that even modern engineers struggle to explain it. Each of its 2.3 million blocks, weighing between 2 to 80 tons, was cut, transported, and placed with remarkable accuracy. Yet we have no evidence to suggest how they did this. The precise alignment to true north, the near-perfect symmetry, and the mathematical proportions embedded in the structure only deepen the mystery. Even with today's technology, reconstructing such an immense monument would be an incredible challenge. These examples suggest that ancient builders may have possessed a level of technological sophistication far beyond what mainstream archaeology currently acknowledges. There's also the mystery of the Great Sphinx, which some researchers believe is far older than traditionally thought. The water erosion hypothesis, proposed by geologist Dr. Robert Schoch, argues that the deep vertical weathering patterns on the Sphinx's body were caused by prolonged exposure to heavy rainfall, something that hasn't occurred in Egypt since the end of the last ice age. This suggests that the Sphinx could be thousands of years older than the 4,500-year-old date assigned by mainstream Egyptology. If you want to learn more, I did a whole video on this topic, which you can find on my channel. Next, we need to talk about America, and the possibility that an ancient seafaring civilization reached there far earlier than the accepted date of Columbus in 1492. Emerging evidence suggests that ancient America and the Amazon jungle were far more advanced and interconnected than previously believed, challenging long-held assumptions about early civilizations. The traditional Clovis First model, which insisted humans arrived in the Americas no earlier than 13,000 years ago, has recently been overturned by sites like Monte Verde in Chile and the Pedra Furada rock shelters in Brazil, which may date back to 30,000 or even 50,000 years ago. This raises the possibility that early seafarers reached South America long before the Ice Age land bridge theory allows. A genetic study published in 2021 identified an Australasian genetic signal in various indigenous South American populations. If true, this would suggest humans traveled by boat to South America thousands of years before mainstream archaeologists accept. Linguistic evidence also suggests links between early South American and Australasian populations, hinting at transoceanic contact. LiDAR scans in the Amazon reveal lost cities, causeways, and evidence of intensive land management, proving the jungle was once home to millions of people in organized societies. These findings suggest not only that civilizations in the Americas predates what mainstream history acknowledges, but also that early humans may have traveled the oceans and settled these lands far earlier than conventional models suggest. My final point is that if there really was a lost ancient civilization, surely much of the evidence for it would now be underwater. At the end of the last ice age, around 12,000 years ago, global sea levels were over 100 meters lower than today, meaning vast stretches of land where ancient people may have lived are now underwater. As the glaciers melted, coastlines transformed, submerging potentially thousands of settlements that could hold evidence of a lost civilization. If an advanced civilization existed before 12,000 years ago, much of its evidence would now be buried beneath the waves, lost to time. Therefore, at the very least, all of this requires further exploration. Yet, rather than investigate with an open mind, many mainstream archaeologists prefer to scoff, dismiss, and tear down anything that goes against the accepted timeline. But the truth is, this is truly fascinating stuff, and we shouldn't be fighting over it, we should be investigating it. Because if the past is far richer and far more complex than we've been led to believe, then perhaps it's time to start asking questions that they really don't want us to be asking. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel.